Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power Man Podcast. My name's Rory Podcast, but you all know that already. You've been here for a while. I know it. And you guys have been listening to me talk for a long time, and it's because of you that I'm still talking today. So I want to make sure that I'm thanking everybody right now. The growth that we've experienced since we moved to 5 days a week has blown my doors off. Thank you, people. Thank you, all of you. And thank you to the 80% men and the 20% women that are in our audience right now. We are actually we're growing and we're increasing our reach. So it's really helping a lot. You folks are the reason we're here, and you're the reason I get to keep talking and that I get to do this for a living. Grateful for you folks. Please keep on sharing and liking and everything else that you're doing. As we move forward, I have a fantastic guest today. I've spent just maybe 5 minutes talking to this guy, and we are like so aligned on so many issues. I feel like we could be sitting here having a glass of scotch or something and just hanging out, and but we're going to actually do an episode for you, so it's going to be good. He's going to tell you all kinds of cool stuff he's working on. And before we do that, if you're a friend of the program, you know what we've got to do. So we got to pay a couple bills. So I'm going to take a sip of my preferred beverage. Oh my gosh. Folks, it's fantastic every single time I make it. And you know what it is? It's Freedom Hill Coffee. Find them at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Deep, dark, rich, bold, and beautiful, just like my wife. This cup of coffee, they brew a mean bean. They do a mean cup of joe. They do all the right things for all the right reasons, and they support veterans. And you guys know how important that is here on the Power of Man. It's one of the reasons why we support them so much. Go check them out at Freedom Hill Coffee. And hey, tell them Power Man sent you. All right. There's no coupon code, nothing like that. Just go there, check them out. We do all this because we just support each other, them and us. And you're going to love it. So go check it out. One more sip before we get rolling. All right. I'll be drinking that the entire day, but I'm going to stop talking about it now. So without further ado, let me bring on today's guest, author, soon to be. I can't wait to hear about this book. You're going to love the title. And also, Catholic Life Coach for Men. Love that title. Michael Jaquith. Michael, how you doing, man?
I'm doing awesome. Rory, I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Love having you on. The Scotch line actually came from Michael.
I
So
love scotch. It's so delicious.
gotta give him credit. um, yeah, it was one of those where we were talking, about, hey man, it'd be nice just to sit back, in front of a fire and have this conversation and, share a glass of fine scotch. So we're not doing that though today. Okay, because you guys all know we got to be serious when we're up here. But the fact of the matter is, this guy has a lot of the same principles that we talk about on the show. The name of his book coming up is Powerful Catholic Masculinity. At least that's the title so far, because it's getting ready to come out. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to change it if you need to. Okay, but I like what you
Thank you.
got. All right, Michael. I've done too much talking already. So do me a favor, tell all of our listeners out there, who is Michael Jaquith? What are you about? Why are you here, brother?
I'm here today because I'm a man who didn't want to settle for mediocrity. I grew up in a home that was abusive in every way. You put a word in front of that, that happened in my household. My dad went to jail for 10 years when I was in sixth grade. My family line was a mess, and I had every reason in the world to drift into mediocrity and repeat my family tree yet again. 90% of people don't really change from their family heritage much. And I didn't want to be one of those guys. I wanted something more. And so I set off on a purpose. And I didn't know how much baggage I had, how many wounds were unaddressed through the process, but I knew I wanted something bigger than what was in front of me. I knew I wanted something bigger than what I saw. And so I said, well, and part of my friendship, but F all that. I don't want that. I want something real. And so I went off and I found it and I carved it out and I fought for it. Like St. George putting on a sword and shield, going to fight a dragon sometimes. I think a lot of us men, we'd be more eager to fight a physical dragon than to confront the fears, uncertainties, doubts, and weaknesses inside of ourselves. And so like we glorify that external battle and we run and hide from the internal. That was my story. And there's a lot of points along the way that I'm happy to dig into if you want, where I was given the amazing blessing of various men that came into my life. And with great love and tenderness I did not deserve. They helped live me, they helped me see what's going on. And so now here I am. I made more at graduation than my parents ever made in their life. I have more kids than my wife and my parents together. We have 6 kids. We're very blessed. We live in a place that's beautiful. 15 minutes out the door that way, for those who can see the finger, is the world-class ski resort. And 18 minutes that way is a beautiful lake. Like, we've carved the life we want because I didn't want to settle for just what I saw growing up. And now God is so good. He's given me the opportunity to share that with other men.
Brother, I've shivers on my back right now because I can feel the energy and the passion that you're telling this story with. This obviously is deep stuff for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now let me back up just a couple minutes. You unpacked a lot in that couple of minutes, which I love, and you threw down a whole bunch of different vectors. The there's a lot of guys who listen to this program, and I only know this because I've communicated with so many of them that are like me and that are like you, that had the childhoods that you're describing. Okay, I don't know now if this is something you want to talk about. You absolutely can, but it's not something that you have to talk about because they get it. You know, when you talk about abuse, put something in front of that. I love the way you phrased it. So many of us have experienced that. What so many of us have not experienced is the awakening afterwards. And I love, love, love the analogy about fighting the dragon. We'd rather do that than confront what's inside of us. What brought you to start confronting that beast inside of you that really did need to be slain?
At first, I didn't. So I left my tiny hometown in northern Michigan, pissed off, just angry at the world, determined to drown myself in alcohol and ladies. Turns out I wasn't very good at the second one, thankfully. I would have broken more hearts had I been. But that was my intent. And I set off, and for probably the first 4 years, maybe even 6 years of my life leaving home, that's what I did. And every morning you wake up, you're hungover, you feel like crap, you got rejected again, whatever. Maybe you didn't, doesn't matter. Even if she says yes, you still feel that hollow pit inside. And I said, this can't be all there is. There has to be something more. Like, I really tried. I gave it my A game. And I'm a dude who worked my way through a PhD in chemistry at Cornell with zero financial support anywhere. Like I,
Wow.
I gave it my A game to chase these pleasures. I call it the Church of Hedonism. And it just didn't deliver. And that sent me on a journey because I was like, I don't want this. I saw how miserable my dad was. When my dad got out of jail, he and I reconnected a little bit, and there was no life in his eyes. He was a dead, empty husk of a man. And I just remember sitting with him in a room, staring in his eyes, trying to talk to him, and he maybe only would say a word or two. And there's almost nothing left. And even now, there's a really important moment. It took place about 5 years ago, where, and this really did take me this long to come to this point, where I sat down with my dad and I said, Dad, I forgive you for what happened. And I said to him, I'm gonna have to say that again because this isn't a one and done kind of forgiveness. This is like it's gonna rage up in me again. I'm gonna have to forgive you again, but I want to say the words to you. And he looked at me and he didn't say anything for about 30 seconds. And he said, Michael, I appreciate that, but I can't forgive myself. And that was spot on. He was unwilling to move forward in life. He was stuck in the past. And Rory, I had every reason to stay there too. And I just said, no effing way. I'm not staying there. We can talk about the psychology of this, about how our brains want to live in the past, our brains want to live in the future, and it's so hard to live in the now. But everything good that we need is in the now. So Christianity is a big part of my story. And one way that really is manifested is this with this line, God only has a will for you in the now. Call it universe, whatever you want to call it. We only have a will from the divine power for right now. When I pray, I say, God, what do you want me to do now? Now, maybe I have to start something now that will take a year, whatever, to come to fruition. I just planted a bunch of fruit trees. I don't think we'll eat from those for 2 years. That's okay. But right now, in this moment, what is God's will for me? Learning to live in the present and to say, I will not be bound by the past. It's not easy. There's a lot of ties to cut, but I didn't want it. Like deep down in my core, something about me, a fiber of Michael said, no, I'm not going to accept that.
Wow. God only has a wow. Wow, in the now. Okay. You know what? That's tough. That really is. Was your father in jail for something that had happened to you, or was it something totally unrelated?
It was mostly what happened to my sister, and stuff he did there.
Okay.
There was plenty of broken bones and other stuff that I accumulated through the process as well.
Yeah.
He was a man who not only wasn't ready to get married, it was a shotgun wedding. He slept with my mother, conceived me, tried to persuade her that I should be aborted. When that failed, his dad dragged him down the aisle almost with a shotgun, as I understand. Obviously, I was in utero at the time, and he never stepped in.
Sorry, man. I've been there and I understand. And a lot of other guys have been there too. They're all hearing your story right now, just nodding their head, going, yep. hmm
Yep.
I'm not sure what it is about that generation, that baby boomer type generation there that just missed the boat so badly on so many dads, out there in the world. But man, they really do own that horrible dad, genre, that age
You
group.
know, if I could offer to maybe some insight to there,
I would
because
love it.
part of my journey in forgiving my father was to try to come to a reckoning of that exact question. What did happen to that generation? And I look and I think as a man, if I want to improve myself, I have to find forgiveness for the hurts of my life. There's an old axiom, you cannot give what you do not have. Now, if I do not have love in my heart, I cannot give love to those who I need to give love to. And so it starts with getting rid of the anger and resentment. There's not room for both. And so when I study this with my dad's case in particular, I looked at what happened there. He was filled with lies. There was, I don't want to dive too deeply into politics here, but there was a lot of really bad ideas thrown around to that generation. A lot of ideas that were, you're all that matters, you're what's important, self-esteem garbage. The self-esteem movement is now thoroughly debunked as far as I'm concerned. But this mentality was given them, pursue whatever you want, and that's what matters. You should just be happy. But if you compare that to generations before, there was this idea that purpose came through sacrifice, through hard work, through struggle. And men aren't designed to sit around and drink Mai Tais and eat grapes on the beach. Like, you die inside if that's what you do. And
Yeah.
they were given these horrible lies. They were treated badly in terms of what they were told their purpose in life was. And so then they tried to live out what they were told and it blew up. Now, what's even crazier is I think our generation heard the same message, but then watched it happen to our parents who said, well, clearly that didn't work. Let's find something else.
Right. I love that. I think you're exactly right too. There was just some level of toxicity, with that whole movement. And it was. I mean, that's very insightful. It was all about, me, 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 do what makes me happy, pursue this. And that's why so many of them are just so unhappy with themselves. They all expected to be, rich and powerful and movie stars, and they all feel like they've failed. That entire generation, it seems like.
I think one of the most profound things a man listening could take home right now, every time I say it's about me, my life gets worse. Every time I choose to make it about somebody else, my life gets better. It's so counterintuitive. Like the
Yeah.
selfish part of me doesn't want to believe that, and I fail at that regularly. But with the six kids, there are some days I go and I just give myself to them, and I pour myself into them. I listen to my 7-year-old describe, the little Bob Bear goes to the beach book he's reading. True story. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I peel my eyeballs out because I cannot stand Bob Bear goes to the beach another time. But when I pour myself into him, there's a fulfillment there that I can never get being by myself.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the tenets that we have here at the Power Man, and that I've talked about since basically moment one. And I've gotten a lot of flack for it from a lot of the people who are like, "Oh no, you got to take care of yourself first," and all this other stuff. I've never advocated not taking care of yourself, but it's always been the people who depend on you have to be more important to you than you are to you. And people who agree with that seem to be doing very well in life. And the people who fight against that are having some problems.
If
So
I could spin off that as well, as I said,
please.
I'm a talker. I think one of the ironies is a lot of people who insist I have to have what I need don't even know what they need. And so this is actually a really important
Wow.
concept. Like it's easy to say, oh, I need food and water. Sure enough. And there's some debates about what food is healthy, blah, blah, blah. But
Right.
what do I need emotionally? As a man, I have emotional needs. What are those? Do I understand those? And the truth is, it's not to have my ego stoked. Like that's actually not a need. But I do have a need. Like I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins. He outlines 6 essential human needs, and you can go look those up. I
Yeah.
think those are pretty close to being right on. But we as men have real emotional needs. But if we don't identify what they are, there's no way we have them meeting them. And then we get all spun up in our wants. And that's a very different story.
That's exactly where a lot of people land. I could not agree more. Yeah, well, I need to go do this. Well, no, you don't really need to go do that. That's just what you'd prefer to do right now. Um, the whole idea that if the plane's going down, you have to put your mask on first, right, to take care of everybody else. That sort of thing. Well, you got to fill your own cup first before you can fill anybody else's. That's all great. That's all well and good. That's all pretty new age stuff. But the bottom line is, if there's 4 people sitting at the table and there's 3 pieces of chicken, who doesn't eat? The guy that was
Right.
supposed to provide the fourth piece of chicken. That's who doesn't eat. And so we keep it very simple on a masculine level, just in terms of your job is protect, provide, and lead your family. And if you can't do that, then you've got to sacrifice to make up for it. And so many
Right.
people just go down that other road and use it as an excuse. I'm taking care of me, so I can't go to the kids' game tonight because I'm going out with the guys because I got to take care of me and fill my cup. And I'm like, every time I hear that, it ends badly.
Even right there, let's talk about going out with the guys. So many men I know, like, oh yeah, I have guy time. I'm like, what do you do? Oh, we watch sports together. Okay, great. What's the conversation? We talk about the sports game. I'm like, that's not a need. There's no need for sports or video games or that kind of stuff. There's a need for authentic male connection to stand in front of another man and look you in the eye and say, Rory, I am struggling. This earlier this week, there was this girl at the gym and I couldn't stop looking at her. And I'm really struggling to get the image out of my head. And I know it's wrong, but I'm just struggling because that's there. Can you encourage me? Can you pray for me? Can you be involved? There's a need there in that masculine connection that is not met by these casual, frivolous, call them activities.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up, the masculine connection part of it, because, men do need a brotherhood of some kind. They've got to have some kind of masculine connection. And you're right. It's not about, being at a sports bar, throwing back beers and, watching football. It needs to be more meaningful than that. And you brought in just now, of course, your faith, and you've talked about that before. Um, what role has your faith played, in getting here? And I am curious, especially given your upbringing, when it started for you. When did you start being exposed to it, and when did you really, feel a connection to your faith?
So I was raised in what was called a Christian household. And I said, well, golly, if this is what a Christian household is, I want nothing to do with this.
Right.
And so I kicked that to the curb and chased what I call the church of hedonism. And then I started looking around. And it became pretty clear earlier that I needed something bigger than myself, a purpose to pursue. Now, I'm very intellectual. And so what I started doing is I started looking around at purposes and like, okay, making money. Well, I'm going to die. And when I die, where's that money go? I mean, maybe give some to my kids. Okay. I mean, there's a reality that for the hardcore philosophers, nihilism ends in suicide. And you need something bigger out there. Now, that doesn't necessarily have to be the Christian faith. You can find a purpose in something bigger than yourself. But then for me, it was probably it was in 2008. So I would have been 27 years old when I finally yielded to this pursuit where I had at that point pretty seriously evaluated most of the major world religions and really been like testing them. Can I rigorously find one that holds up for truth? And the one that I found was Catholicism. And I threw every question in the book I could at it, harder and harder questions. And it had an answer for all of them. But even more than that, and I think this is probably true for all the Christian flavors, it had a real why. And the real why was something that I needed because here's one of the realities. I didn't like myself at this point in my life. I thought I was kind of a loser scumdog. As putting that's like the G-rated version of what is actually being said in my head. And so here I am, always trying to earn love, performance mentality. If I just do this next thing, if I get this PhD without money, I'll earn love. Someone will have to love me then. Well, that doesn't work. And so then like I'm really in a bind because if I can't do good enough to earn love, and I know deep down I'm a scumdog, again, G-rated version,
That's
then what
me.
do I do? And here's this character named Jesus. And Jesus comes along and says, actually, I love you as a scumdog. And you're like, I'm not so sure. Good trick right there. I don't know if I believe that. And then you have to test it. And that's my invitation to people who are on their journey to test it. Don't take my word for it. You don't necessarily have to go through some intellectual process. But you as a man need something bigger. And the closer you can get to that something bigger, the more meaningful it is. I was blessed, as I mentioned, with all these mentors, and every one of them made time to meet in person. And we would sit down in offices and whatever, and we would sit down and we would just talk. And they didn't have a timeline. Like they poured into my life. It was very personal. And if I wanted to bring up a different topic that was different, they supported it. And I think there's something about this idea that the personal connection is so powerful. And so, therefore, if I want to look for something in the universe, something that's personal has a lot more potential. And
For
that's where I
sure.
ended up.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I want to ask you about your mentors, of course. First, though, I do want to go back. You said that Catholicism had a real why, a real why. That's a very large statement to throw out there.
It
Can you
is.
be a little more specific about that and give an example to these guys about what that means?
When a mother looks at a newborn child, that mother will do anything for that child. Why? Because every bit of her loves that baby through and through. And Catholicism teaches me that the love of God for every single human being dwarfs that love a mother has for her baby. And so pause and let's just stay in the intellectual realm for a moment. If that were true, Like, what would that mean to be loved? I've heard some of the great philosophers of the day say the human soul burns love as a fuel. And if you have love, you can do anything. And you've all experienced this in romantic relationships. I also am blessed with a wonderful wife as you are. And when your wife pours love into you, you feel like you're on the top of the world. And even in my broken state, I had moments where I'd been loved, but nothing like what the love that was promised. As a Catholic, we believe in one of the sacraments is called the Eucharist, where we believe we actually eat the flesh of our Lord Jesus. And in my journeys, someone asked me, "Well, do you have a personal relationship with Jesus as a Catholic?" And I said, "Well, I put his flesh in my mouth every week. Is that personal enough for you?" And I say it's a little bit of a silly answer here, but I want to maybe hammer home the connection that I found with our Lord there in a real and tangible way. I've effed up a lot in my life. And so when I go to the confessional and I say, "Bless me, Father, I've sinned. I did A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and definitely H." And he's like, at the very end, he's like, "Your sins are forgiven." There's a power, there's a love there that flows. And the reality is, as a man, we all know this. Like, when our wife believes in us, we can conquer anything. When we feel love, there's no mountain too big. And when we feel alone, even a little tiny hill, a little molehill might be too intimidating. And
Right.
that's the why.
Wow. I knew you were gonna have a good answer for that. That's amazing, man. Let me talk about your mentors for just a minute, and if you want to keep them anonymous, hey, I totally understand. Is there anybody you want to give a shout out to? I want to ask you that, right off the bat, because they may
Um,
listen.
if they're listening, then Gary, Ben, Dan, those you three are probably the biggest ones. Those are great jobs. But let me tell a funny story. So Gary was the best boss in the world, and I was working for Intel at the time, and I did very well. I progressed very quickly, and I was very quickly promoted and given a team. 1 year later, Gary says to me, Michael, come over. We got to talk." I'm like, "Okay, Gary's about the new experiment." "No, no, it's not that." "What's going on, Gary?" "Everyone on your team wants to leave. They hate your guts." And I said, "Oh, not where I thought this was going.
Okay.
Okay, I need a moment to process that." And he says, "I'm not going to give you a moment." He looks me in the eye, steps up close to me, says, "I believe in the potential of you enough. I'm going to give you a new team, but you have to promise me you will be so coachable that I will hold your hand and teach you how to be a good mentor yourself." And I said, "Well, between the options of losing a job and that sounds great." I didn't know what I was saying yes to at the time. And to his credit, Gary was absolutely ruthless in that loving way. I had to BCC him in every single email I sent out, every single email. He attended the back of every single meeting I ran. And afterwards, he was ruthless. He would say, "When you did this, you made this person feel this way. When you did that, you made that person feel that way." And it was such a dramatic transformation that one of those people in my original team, his name is Josh. 2 years later, I'm running a cross functional team, and Josh happened to be attending it. And at the end of the meeting, as we're walking out, Josh reaches over and grabs my shoulder a little more physically than Josh normally would. He pulls me off the side and he's like, "Michael, we got to talk." I'm like, "Sure, Josh, what's going on?" He said, "What happened to you? You were a number one a-hole jerk. And now I find myself wanting to respect you. So what did you get and where do I get it?"
Nice.
And in that moment, I think I realized what Gary had done for me. And it was not comfortable. I think true growth is normally painful and it requires you to look at the weaknesses. And Gary called out my weaknesses in private, but directly. And he said, "This is what's going on, and this is the effect it's having." And he didn't use the word love. He wasn't Christian, but he could have used the word love given the way he spoke, and it would have fit just right at one. So there's one story of Gary.
Nice. Nice. Now, were these all work-related type, colleagues that ended up being mentors of yours, or were any of them through the church?
Here's another great one, the story about Ben. So I'm just married. We've had our first baby. The baby's one. She's doing what all 1 year olds do in church, which is scream and thrash and carry on because they know they can get some sort of movement if they do. And so I take her back to the cry room and I'm holding her. I'm like, "Argh." Like I'm just, radiating anger out of my body. Like I'm not hurting her, but I'm angry. And so Ben's watching. I didn't know this. And so next Sunday, my wife was in cahoots with his wife, didn't know that either. And Ben comes up to me, and you can tell he had this all prepared. He comes up to me and says, "Hi, my name is Ben. Can we talk for a second?" I said, "Sure, Ben. My name's Michael." And he says, "This is not my place to say this, but I wanted to reach out to you." And he says, "When I was a few years younger, I was really struggling. And another man came up and talked to me. He reached out and hands me a flash drive. And he says, 'I'm going to give this to you. And after I walk away, you can throw it in the trash if you want to. But on this flash drive is a whole bunch of talks, audiobooks, and things that helped me change my life. And if you want it, I'm just going to give it to you. No commitment required.'" And he said, and then he reaches into his pocket and pulls out a card. And he says, "On top of that, I'm going to buy lunch so we can talk. It's up to you. You can throw this card away too if you want. But here's my card. You want to have lunch anytime. You let me know. Lunch is on me." He shakes my hand. He walks away. I'm like a little shaken, like, what just happened? As I said, his wife was in cahoots with my wife for this. And I go home and I'm like, well, all right. I plug in the little flash drive in my computer. First talk, anger management by Deacon Papa Donald. I'm like, okay, all right, all right. I kind of get the picture here. But I listened to it. I listened to all of them multiple times. I took Ben up on his meeting for lunch. And Ben was a gentle soul who just explained why these things work the way they do. Like in our human minds, we have this idea that life should just work a certain way, and it doesn't. Like, a great example of this is just how different men and women are. It's not just plumbing. And that when you dive deeper into the differences of men and women and understand that you will never understand her brain and vice versa, and you start to love her through that and choose how to lead as a husband with that understanding in place, the whole dynamic change. Like I was an engineer, I wanted to understand everything, put a check mark in every box. I wanted to understand how her brain worked and then compel her brain to work the way I thought it ought to work and follow all my checklists. Don't try that at home, by the way.
Right.
But Ben was a huge part of me changing how I worked at home.
All right. I love you brought that up. Let's go that direction. I'm always talking about leading your family, leading your marriage, being out front. Leading is I probably say that word 200, 300, 400 times a day. You just brought that up in a very similar context. Let me ask you then, what does leading your marriage, what does leading your family mean to you when you say those words?
It means that everything that happens inside these four walls and on my vehicles and on my property, we're so blessed we have a 5-acre property, is my responsibility ultimately. It means that when a decision has to be made, I will collect input and weigh it appropriately, oftentimes very heavily for my wife, but I make the decision. Can I tell a quick story to answer this?
Of course, yes.
So 2 years ago, my wife is a dog lover. She's always been a dog lover, always is a dog lover. She wants to get this puppy. And so we have 6 kids. They're very little. We had 6 kids in 8 years. So like we had a lot of diapers. And she wants to get this puppy. And she finds this golden retriever puppy. Sorry, not golden, border collie puppy, high energy dog. It's 10 hours away by airplane. And it's going to cost an arm and a leg to get the stupid thing, another arm and a leg to get it here. And so she's like, I really want to get this dog. I think this dog will change our household and make our household so much better. Now, in my brain, I'm like, no, that's a terrible idea. But I don't want to make my wife unhappy, right? So what do I do as a husband doesn't want to get somebody? All right, honey, I guess so. I'm warning you. I think it's a bad idea, but go ahead and you can do it if that's what you think is best. Zero leadership in that moment. Okay. So she does it. She gets the dog. It's an utter catastrophe. There's anger between her and the kids because the kids don't want to deal with this high energy dog. The dog's destroying stuff. Everything you can imagine is going wrong with a border collie puppy and 6 little children. And a very unfortunate event happens in some perspective. And we have a gentleman who visits the property, and he's driving very slow and respectfully. And this dog was always a tire chaser. And this particular day, the dog catches the tire and killed instantly.
Oh.
And so we go out and we bury the dog. We cry together. One of the things I believe strongly as part of leading is that I let the kids see me cry. And I said, despite how much I was frustrated with this dog, I probably see me loved this dog. And so I'm getting a little dusty right now, even thinking about this moment. And we all cried and we prayed together. And it was a very bonding moment. And so we went to bed. And the next day I did another awesome thing husbands should never do. And I go sit down in the chair. My wife sits down in the chair. And there's this funny quiet in the house. And it's a little more peaceful. And no one's screaming about the dog. And my wife says to me, I never realized how terrible that dog was for the peace of our household. And in my brilliance in this moment, do not do this. I said, well, yeah, that's kind of what I said. AKA, I told you so. So that went down about as well as you could think.
Wow.
And so I'm talking a week later to one of my coaches, and I say, all right, Ken, here's the deal. This is why I can't trust my wife's judgment, because you see, here's the story with the dog, and see how bad it was. I can't trust her. He looks me in the eyeball. He says, no, Michael, you can't trust yourself. I said, what do you mean, Ken? And he said, you knew the right answer. You knew what you were supposed to do, and you wimped out. You were afraid of your wife's disappointment, and you failed to step up to the plate and lead. And then you want to blame her for your failure to lead up front. And I just sat there. It was like a kick to the gut. And I was like, oh, Ken's great. Every time I say that noise, he's like, good, that one connected. That probably was the right thing for you to need. And okay, fair enough. And I thought about that though, and it's spot on. Now, I think as a husband, it's important to do that lovingly. But I think what I should have done in that moment, but going way back in time when the idea first came up, I should have reached over, held her hand in my hand, looked her in the eye and leaned in, honey, I love you. And I love you a dog, and I love you the money. But this is the wrong thing for our family right now. And it's not about you, it's not about the dog, it's not about the money. It's just the wrong thing for our family. I've prayed about it, I've discerned this isn't right. I'm asking you as your husband to not pursue this dog anymore. Maybe in the future we'll get a dog. Had I done that, that would have been night and day different. So
Yeah.
at the end of this dog equation, we had a talk, and she still is a dog lover. And I put together a list of what she would have to find to get another dog. Several years old, potty trained, good with kids, raised with kids, blah, blah, blah. Actually, it was a pretty lengthy list. She just found one actually 2 months ago. So we have a dog in the house again. This dog is folding in pretty well. Like all dogs do a little troubling, but this one's folding. It's a totally different experience than that little puppy because I led, because I said, what is it that our household needs? And there's a way to do that that's not tyrannical but loving. And there's a way to do that that really looks and says, this dog isn't going to be good for my wife or my kids. And it's true that I didn't really want the dog also, but that wasn't why. If it had just been me, I would probably have said yes to the dog earlier. I still don't want this dog we have now. Don't tell my wife I said that. Keep that a secret between you and me. But she loves the dog. The kids love the dog. The dog is serving our family well because I thought about it, prayed about it, led, and said, this is the criteria to get a dog.
Great story. Great answer to the question. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. um, I love that. And yeah, we all have those moments where you look back and go, how could I ever have let those words come out of my mouth? And
Oh,
you just want to chase them after they're out there, but you're like, no, too late. They're out. I'm done. So I get it. I really do get it. Now, you went, you've learned a lot of these lessons for real, which I do love. In your stories, even when you're talking about making these mistakes, what you're telling me and all the listeners is, hey, I've made the mistakes, so I know what I'm talking about. Therefore, when someone like you becomes a coach, it's real, it's authentic. It's I've been here, I've been where you are. I'm not somebody who just thinks he's perfect. I've learned, I've got the scars to prove it, and I love coaches like that. So good for you for going into that. I am a little curious as to how you go from being, PhD in chemistry from Cornell, working in the corporate world, to becoming a Catholic life coach for men. Is there a short story for that?
we can do that pretty short. Do you ever hear the old joke, the way to make God laugh is tell him your plans?
Oh yeah.
That's kind of the version of it. So I went from working for the world's best boss, Gary at Intel, to working for the world's worst boss at Micron. I won't say his name. And it was a horrific experience. And so I kind of wanted to leave. And I really prayed and discerned about it. And I realized the part I loved the most actually, because of Gary's involvement, was mentoring people. And I had all these people I was mentoring, people in my group, parallel people outside my group. I would go talk to them and mentor them and encourage them. And they ate it up. And I loved that. And that feeling made me feel alive. And so it became very clear. Micron offered a voluntary separation package that was very lucrative. I mean, hey, God, if God wants to work through money, I'm willing to work that way too, you know? And my wife and I talked about it and prayed about it. And we really did. And I'll be honest, I was scared poopless by this kind of move. So she is a very entrepreneurial soul. I am not. Like,
Wow.
I resisted, to put it mildly, and I resisted for a long time. And I really prayed. I think part of being a man of leadership is to know who to submit myself to. And ultimately, it was made very clear to me through a period of reading, of prayer, reflection, of feedback from other men that I trust and respect that all aligned to the same picture that God was asking me to step out and leave behind the safety, the comfort, the security, the retirement package, the healthcare package. You know the drill. We call it
Hmm.
golden handcuffs
Oh yeah.
of the big corporate life, and to accept making a whole lot less money. And I will perhaps offer it to you this way. Financially, I'm not sure I could have made a worse decision. I still have friends in corporate world, and their net worth has, for some of them, more than one zero behind it than mine does. And like that's a reality I have to live with. And there's a
Yeah.
humility that comes from saying, yeah, I do feel like God called me, and it's not money. But remember, I said at the beginning of this, we can't take the money with us. I wanted purpose. I wanted meaning. And I realized that to be authentic, to live up to what I said I wanted to be, I had to be willing to take that risk. And it was bumpy. I mean, it helped that we had a pretty nice big runway. We had two properties at the time. We sold one of them. We had that nice big financial package from Micron. And then we proceeded over the next 3 years to eat up every dime of that and still weren't making enough to pay the bills. Just to give you kind of a sense of the roller coaster ride.
Got it. I mean, everybody, yeah, a rocky start is not uncommon, especially in the coaching world. So I totally
Correct.
understand. I made the same move. I get it. I feel it. I mean, you're telling me this, and I can still feel the pain. So I understand. But you stuck with it. How long have you been doing this?
4 years now.
Nice. Nice. Very few people make it 4 years. So congratulations on that. You must be pretty good at what you're doing.
I will give all credit up there. Most of what I do is I ask really good questions, and then like once they realize it, I just talked to a new gentleman today I never talked to, and his situation was not that different from my situation in childhood. And what most men do is the conversation goes like this: "Well, I don't know, it's probably fine. Like I just got to do work harder than people like me. Well, it'll work out okay, just fine." And I'll just stop them in their tracks, be like, "Well, do you like yourself?" And then we'll start digging in there, and he's always like, "Well, oh, sure, sure, sure. I like myself. Great. I'm a good dude." I'm like, "Really?" And we dig, and I start putting words out there. And I tell them, "Here, I'm just going to throw some words against the wall, and you tell me what spaghetti sticks." Because and I'll throw a bunch of words out there and be like, "Oh, those all stuck." I'm like, "Yeah, okay. So now we know where we really are." And I think there's just such a power to have walked the walk, to have been there, to have felt those pains, and say, dude, I get it. You're not fooling yourself. You're not fooling me. You're not fooling God. Like, no one here is fooled except for what you think you're trying to do in your head. So, do you want to deal with this or not? And then open it up and let the good Lord take it from there.
Yeah. No, I love that, and I agree with you on all points. I had a 20-year-old contact me a long time ago about wanting to be on the show, and I said, "Hey, that's great. We have all kinds of young people involved in our movement and what we do." And I said, "What do you do?" He said, "I'm a life coach." I said, "You're 20.
Yeah.
You, you've lived like 3 years of life outside of mom and dad. What are you going? Who are you coaching? Teenagers?" And it just didn't work out. And but I love hearing that. And when you've been through it, people know. If you're talking to somebody about, "Hey, I've been there," they know. If you're being real, or if you're live, or if you're Memorex, you know what I mean. They know what's going on. So I love that. Now you do have coaching programs, one-on-one and group, right? Tell everybody
Correct.
just a little bit about what to expect if they contact you about coaching. What's the difference, and how do you make that determination who goes into which group, or how's it work?
So, the first thing I tell people is if you aren't ready to be vulnerable and real, don't bother. I reject potential clients. And when we get into conversation, I mentioned earlier how men like to throw up the chaff and be like, "Oh, it's fine, it's fine." I'll tell them, if it's all fine, why are you here? And because I've worked with men before, I've accepted clients that weren't ready, and that's a mistake. And so I think it's one of the greatest gifts we can sometimes tell men, you're not ready for this yet. You're still living in denial. Once you've decided to really look at this, come back. Okay, that said, um, here's kind of the way I look at it. One-on-one coaching is faster. One-on-one coacher is better for dealing with deeper issues. Group coaching, let me throw one of that. One-on-one thing, coaching is completely confidential. And so there are some clients, particularly individuals involved with politics of the church. I've had a number of priests, a number of deacons, not no big politicians, but some minor ones. And for them, that confidentiality is critical. And so
Absolutely.
you just cannot guarantee confidentiality in the same way in a group program, obviously. A group program, I look at you're willing to do the heavy lifting, and I'll kick your butt periodically and keep pointing out the right direction for you to keep lifting. One on one, we're in it together. So in the state of Washington, we lived in Portland for a while. There's this really cool space called these lava tunnels, right? And you go down there, and it is pitch black. You bring flashlights, you bring backup flashlights, you bring backup flashlights, and you bring backup batteries for your backup flashlights. Because if it goes dark, you see nothing. And it's not like it's a straight shot tunnel. It goes up, it'll go up 4 feet, it'll jag hard left, it'll have like little false directions. It's so cool. Anyways, I sometimes tell people if you went down there, and most men are in those dark tunnels, and you don't have a flashlight, you want somebody who's not only been there before, but can bring a flashlight, and ideally a backup and a backup. And when you're there, and you know it if you're there, it's not for group coaching. That's for the one-on-one time. And we're going to go down there together. I'm going to walk next to you with a flashlight. Be like, okay, that tunnel over there looks bigger. Don't take that one. Go this other way.
Nice.
And then you get to walk back after you go through it and you get to see all the different openings. They're pretty cool. It's all from when Mount St. Helens blew up a while ago.
I've never even heard of that, but that's a great analogy. So it lends itself to a fantastic story. I love that. That's great. Yeah, we touched on it briefly. Tell everybody a little bit about the book. What can they expect is going to be what's the makeup of the book coming out?
So, what is it to be masculine? I love the analogy of dancing. I use a lot of dancing analogies. So, my wife and I do swing dancing, all right? And so, when I'm swing dancing with my wife or with another woman, and I raise my left hand, she knows, well, when she's doing the dancing, right, that she has to do a spin. My wife doesn't have to think. She just loves it. Like the better I am of a dancer, the better I'm to lead, the more my wife loves to dance. She loves to be spun. She loves to be shown off. She loves to be tilted. You know how it goes, right? Like women love this stuff. Am I being a tyrant of a man? No, of course not. I'm being a good dancer. But what does that translate to in marriage? Because you go into marriage, and if I'm like, wife, when I raise my hand, I want you to spin, she'd be like, well, I got babies to feed. What are you talking about? right? And how do we as men find the same confidence, the power, the presentation that you have as a dancer in your life? I mentioned earlier with the puppy story that what I should have done was sat there with her, reached my hand out, put her hand in my hand, maybe between both my hands, and spoken from the depth of my heart with all the emotion I could muster why I was making that decision. That is powerful masculinity. When a woman knows to her core and feels to her core that you love her, not like this frivolous, oh, I love those shoes, but like you love her. She delights to be led that way. Deep down, there's something in the feminine that wants a man to lead when it comes from that sacrificial, loving perspective. No one wants a tyrant. It's easy to be a tyrant. But the book is about what does it mean to be powerfully masculine? And I think one of the major struggles our society has is we have lost sight of the polarity of masculine and feminine. And the reality is, it's men's job to go first. This is true in dancing. This is true in marriage. This is why the man asks the woman to get married. It's man's job to go first. And if you are not leaning into your masculine, I'm a chemist. We talk about this with charges. If I'm not leaving in my positive charge, she can't be a negative charge. She can't be feminine. It just doesn't work. That's just metaphysics. Like this is true. If I have a strong positive ion in solution, it creates strong negative ions all around it. It's the same thing in the romantic world, the same thing in the marriage world. To be strongly masculine invites her into her strong feminine. But it's hard. It's scary. It involves risk. It involves vulnerability. It requires us to look at where are we not being fully integrated? Where are we saying one thing and leaving another? Because women smell that stuff so fast. Their radar, man, is sharp. Like they've got that radar that picks up on it. And if they pick up on you being inauthentic, the whole effect is all lost. And so the book is about how do you be powerfully masculine, unreservedly, and how is that different? I don't talk much about toxic masculinity. I just focus on the positive, but I leave it to the reader to decide if you believe in such a thing as toxic masculinity, which there's toxic masculinity and toxic femininity as well.
Sure.
This is the right version to aim for. And that's my intent with the book.
Nice. Looking forward to that coming out. You got any kind of a date on it or something where we can look for it?
I've got it with a graphics person right now, hopefully within a month. We're self-publishing, so it shouldn't be too long at that point.
Nice. Nice. Okay. When it comes out, please let me know. I mean,
Will do.
yeah, I'll make sure that I pub it on the show and talk about it and pick it up. So looking forward to reading that for sure. And I'm committing right here on the show that I'm going to read the book.
Appreciate
All
that.
right. So you got your first sale right here. I can't wait to hear it. And I do love the title. And yeah, I love everything you're doing. I got to give you a little bit of credit here because you probably, no, you definitely, you have the best analogies of anybody that's ever been in your chair, brother. Okay. I mean, every time I ask you a question, you're like, well, it's kind of like this. And you've got four analogies in a story. I love it. I absolutely love it, man. You can tell you're good at putting that out there and storytelling.
I'm a visual conceptual kind of guy. And so like I like to see it. I like to understand something from multiple dimensions. That's just how I work. Honestly, I think most of us men, like, if you want, if I were to describe to you, right now in my pickup truck, I've got a wheel position sensor that is gone bad. And so I just ordered a new position sensor. And I could describe to you, go 6 inches back from where the tire is located, and then find a 10 millimeter wrench, find the nut that looks like this, crank it around approximately 3.5 full turns. Like I could do the description, or in one picture, you can get so much more out of it. Our brains are wired for imagery. Our brains are wired for story. And in the case of the wheel thing, it's right for a YouTube video. That was my rules. If the YouTube video is less than 5 minutes, I'll do the work in the car. If it's not, I pay for someone to do it. Like that's just my mechanical inclination ability. But I think it's so critical that as we try to reach out, Bishop Barron's a big fan of mine, and he says for the longest time, the way humans are inspired are the good, the true, and the beautiful. And the reality is, goodness has been called into question by our society. Truth is definitely under attack. Like, what is truth today is a real
Oh
point
yeah.
of debate. But beauty still stands through. People still go look at beautiful artwork, at beautiful scenery. Um, Last night, 2 nights ago, the sun was setting, and there's a mountain range to my right and a mountain range to my left. And the sun sets on the left, and the mountain range on the right was lit up with these beautiful pink and purple tips, and the snow was there as pink and purple, and the moon was rising on top of it. And the whole family just stopped as we're coming out of the car and looked at the beauty. Beauty reaches us on a deep level. And so I love imagery.
Yeah, and as I'm giving you a compliment for storytelling, you come out with all that again. So, dude, that's I don't know how you do it. I mean, you just like whipping them out like you got this inventory of them. It's beautiful. Congratulations, because yeah, I bet you're a fantastic coach, man. I bet you are. You do have something that has come up before that I did want to ask you about, and in kind of rounding down where we are right now. You brought up at one point in your travels the most important tool to transform your life. That's a very, very big statement. You know what I mean? Especially when you say the singular most important tool, because there's so many. No, I mean we have a million tools in our toolbox. Every time we listen to a new person, we could pick up another one. What is this for you? What does this mean to Michael? Most important tool to transform your life.
I have to do another story. Sorry, I can't not
I
do a
love
story.
it. Go for it.
A few years ago, my wife and I were in a dark place, and pretty dark. And when you're in that spot with your wife, and everything she does is wrong, and everything you do is wrong, and everything is a negative interaction, everything feels yucky, and you can't even mention, "Hey, look, the walls have paint in them." What? What do you think about the walls? Blah 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 blah. Like it doesn't matter. You're there, right? And the reality is, we know the statistics of divorce in this country. They're very high. I heard a great line the other day that when you divorce, you set down the cross that is your marriage and your children pick it up. And I
Mm,
thought, oh, that is such a great line. So my wife and I here, she's frustrated to the nth degree. I'm frustrated. Why are we still together? The truth is, it's so easy to say, yeah, 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 the kids can deal. But there has to be something more. There has to be a purpose that's higher than me. There has to be a purpose that's higher than me, and that is solid, something I can stand on. When Christ names Simon to Peter, he says, "On this rock I will build my church." And there's this idea of stability, this idea of something worth fighting for. There's a Moana, not Moana, excuse me. Oh, what's the Disney movie thing? Oh, man, worth fighting for. There's like, there's it's almost so fundamental. It's used in children's songs, but this idea of something there, and I believe that that has to be bigger than you, because I will fail. It cannot be just me, and so that thing that's bigger than me is my faith. It is God. Now, your belief in God may be different. I respect you, brother. You don't have to believe the same thing as I do to work with me. I'm going to refer to God because I believe that is such a powerful tool. But I have clients that aren't Catholic, and we have great conversations sometimes. Sometimes we will spin off coaching a little bit. That's okay. But to have something in your life that you can stand on when you hit those moments, when the fecal matters not only hit the oscillating unit broke, blew apart, you got shot shards of electrical material all over the house. You got to have something there, a purpose, a reason. A man needs a reason. You can't do it unless you know your why. And in modern psychology terms, you can endure anyhow if you have a big enough why. Uh, it's it's not like this is a new concept, but I will invite any listener to consider throughout the ages, there's one why that has held water more than any other. Maybe I shouldn't say water, held stone more than any other, and that's the Christian faith. If you look at the power of Christendom and what Christendom has done in the world and what people have accomplished by standing firm on Christendom, by allowing the power of Jesus Christ into your life, that is what I believe is the game changer. That is the biggest and best one.
nice. Absolutely beautiful. I couldn't agree with you more. I loved every single word that you just said. That was really incredible. Thank you for sharing that like that. Um, as we kind of round down and close this up, I mean, I do want to thank you. You've been amazing here today, and I love the stories. I'm teasing you about them a little bit, but that's only because you're so good at them, and you're doing a great job with that. I do want to give you kind of a shot. You've laid down a ton for men to think about, my listeners to contemplate, to think about. You have so many aspects to you, brother, and so many different stories you could be telling. So let me leave you with this, and I'm going to let you go wherever you want to go with it. Maybe there's something I missed today in that you wanted to share. Maybe there's a piece of advice that you'd like to leave with my audience that we didn't get to. Um, Maybe there's a way to talk to these guys who can't figure out how to get where you are. So take this wherever you want. But what's something you want to leave everybody with today?
I want to expand on one thing we said earlier. We talked earlier about how men need men and men need to be in relationships with men. One of the images I use in my book is that masculinity is kind of like order, kind of like rock, and that femininity is kind of like chaos or waves. And I want to stick with the rocks and the waves image here. So when I, as a man, as a husband, am married, I need to be solid. for my wife. And a lot of men get confused. And so men hit existential crisis too. Like, we're allowed to be confused and to be really hurting and all that. But if I go to my wife and I become chaos, I become waves, then I threaten the order of my marriage. Now, here's where this goes. What do I need? I need an external order source. My wife's not wired to be that, okay? Excuse me.
Yeah.
She's wired to be chaos, to be waves. And chaos is a wonderful thing. I explain this in my book. Instead, I need I need to go to another man. I need to go to another man who I can trust to be an order for me. I need to allow myself to fail in the moment I'm with him as another brother to brother, to allow myself to fail my order so that he can support me. And this is a terrifying thing for most men. It will feel like failure. It will feel like coming up short. You'll be terrified of being judged. Some men may judge you. Don't choose them to share with. Choose wisely. But that nature of this man to man bond isn't just about time. It's about allowing yourself to be weak in that moment so that he can help you. And if you try to be strong with another man and you're struggling with something, it won't go anywhere. I tell clients when I start with them, put it all out there. You won't say anything I haven't heard before. I want to hear where you are for real. And in that sense of surrender, we gain something. There's this line in the gospel uh, to those who have, even more will be given, those who have not, even what they have will be taken away, which as an engineer drove me nuts because I'm like, this is a zero sum game. If you don't have, how can you take any more away? Negative numbers don't exist for this here, right? Anyways, that aside. And I think there's something here to say we have to allow ourselves to be emptied, to be received. We have to open up the channel to be able to receive sometimes from another man, and then we can gain more solidness ourselves. But if the door is shut, I cannot. And even what solidness I do have will be taken away. One more biblical reference. There's this Proverbs line that says, as iron sharpens iron, one man sharpens another. Have you ever thought about that? Like just really visualize this process in your head, iron sharpening iron. You take two pieces of iron, you're rubbing them hard. Maybe you got like one of them on a grinding wheel. There's sparks. It's flashing little sparks all over the place. It's hot. Now, here's the deal. You're the piece of iron, not the guy holding it, right? And so how do you think that feels as a dude to be sharpened by another piece of iron? Horrible, right? It felt horrible when Gary said that to me. I felt like the biggest loser of all time. But if we submit to that process and understand that's normal, that's when we can really make real changes. But it takes another man. In the same way that women need women, and they absolutely do, men need other men in this deeper way that I'm trying to describe. And if you don't have that in your life, go find it. Through your church, the community, whatever. But if you don't have that, set out to find it. And I've told men, look, I don't have time in my life for casual relationships. If you want to talk about the weather, not interested. Like when you come to my hunting camp, we're going to have a glass of scotch one evening. We're going to stay up late, and every guy's going to talk about what's really going on. The scotch helps out a little bit.
Amazing. Mic drop right there. That was absolutely fantastic. Michael, I know you're fighting a cold and stuff too, and you did. I mean, you've handled it like a champ up until right here, and it caught you a couple times, but man, you just powered right through it. I've been, yeah, I'm blown away. So much power and passion and everything else coming from you today. I'm sure that my listeners know how much you believe in what you're saying, and that matters. And I want to thank you for bringing all of that with you to our program tonight. It means a lot, man. Thank you for being here.
Well, Rory, you've been a wonderful host. You've asked phenomenal questions, and I've enjoyed our conversation. And I have a fire pit that way out that wall, about 20 feet. Anytime you're in the area, scotch is on me.
Oh, I'll take you up on that. All right, free scotch. I'm booking now. All right, you guys. Michael Jaquith, author, soon to be, on an awesome book, and Catholic life coach for men. If you guys are looking for that kind of leadership, if you're looking for that kind of coaching, look this guy up. I'm going to have all of his info in the show notes. We'll have all of the website and everything else, all the clicks and all the bright lights, so you guys will be able to find him easily. The reason that we bring men onto the show like Michael Jaquith, and the reason we talk about such powerful topics on this show is because if people like Michael and I can get past what we've gotten past, so can you. You all have value. You all know it. And you're all worth it. You just got to believe it. Until next time.